everyone. So my name's Stephen Challoner. I'm an environmental consultant, and my name is Engage Environmental Services. So I just need to drop that down there. So how did I get to where I am today? I ended up going to University of Newcastle. I did a Bachelor of Environmental Science and also completed that with honours. Following the day after I finished that honours program, I was taken up by the survey company I was already working for, but to start up their environmental department. From there, I cut my teeth on a lot of development applications, running them through council. I learned a lot within that time I was with that company. I then took on a managerial role for a satellite office, which had 2 other consultants, and there were 20 other consultants in the main office in Sydney, which is where I had the opportunity to organically build up the satellite office, and we got up to 5 other consultants. We're winning major contracts in New South Wales as the standalone satellite office, and we're bought out twice, which I then saw differing approaches to managerial clients, work scales, and decided to step out on my own after seeing out all my major contracts that I had won. So what can Engage Environmental do? A lot of the work I do is asbestos related, whether it's asbestos investigations, clearances, air monitoring, management plans. A lot of the sites we deal with, there's asbestos that's been buried on the site, or there's asbestos still standing in the building. You can see the whole range of list of things there on the left-hand side that we do, and it's fairly comprehensive. The easiest way to describe it is the contamination sector. If you think of any sort of contaminant, we can do our research on it and find out what we can do to help the client. What you can see there in the 2 pictures is the largest test pit I've ever dug, and it measures something along the lines of 24 metres wide by 35 metres wide, and it gets to 18 metres in depth to the bottom of a former quarry that had been filled with a varying amount of waste and backfill material. So here's some of the career highlights for myself. The Newcastle Light Rail contamination, CSR former brickworks at Metford, Hydro Aluminium, Pacific Highway upgrade, multiple sites, Newcastle Herald redevelopment, and there's a fair list of things that go there. And a majority, probably 70% of those projects, all have asbestos related. So asbestos is high on the list of things that we have to deal with. So here we have the 3 types of asbestos that we usually deal with. You've got chrysotile, crocodilite, and amosite, being white, blue, and brown. These are in their natural form within the ore that they're found. Here you can see a human hair and asbestos fibre. I always like to bring out this photo. I don't know where it's come from, but it's in my data log of files, and I always like to bring it out to show you the size of the asbestos fibre that is likely to cause damage to someone, and you can see the size of it compared to the human hair there, and it's unlikely that the fibre that you breathe in today will cause you to be dead tomorrow. It is a long-term issue, so we need to be cautious whenever we're working around asbestos, whether we're heading up into access holes in houses, under houses, or looking around. And a lot of people don't take precautions seriously. People are aware that smoking and drinking cause cancer, and people just get a bit lackadaisical about asbestos. So what can Engage Environmental do to help? So we conduct site inspections for individual samples or as part of a hazardous materials survey or a risk register. That's a large part of what we do, along with clearance certificates. We inspect material in a safe manner and check the risks to people, workers, and the environment. We are able to provide provide advice throughout a project, and what would be the best way to deal with the issue or issues which arise. We liaise with other consultants. We liaise with removal companies and other contractors. We're able to undertake air monitoring, and we provide a clearance certificate at the end of works to sign off on the site or room or whatever it might be. We're always upfront and open with our clients, and we also listen to their concerns that they might have as well, because asbestos is an emotive topic. People can get really worked up and worried about it, so we've got to be able to talk to the client in a nice, clear, concise way to sort of put them at ease. Here you can see a piece of asbestos on the left-hand side. You'll notice that it has got that golf ball shape that you're able to identify fairly readily as asbestos, and you can actually see some of the larger fibres sticking out of that compressed cement sheeting. And then on the right-hand side, you've got an asbestos roof, which is not so much commonplace anymore, but you still find it within buildings, garages, and even as it's been covered over in other instances. This is one of the things we do a lot of. We do a lot of test pits with doing a detailed site investigation on properties. And as part of that, we have to do test pits. And this is following aerial photography interpretation of where buildings were over the decades. From there, we're able to sort of determine where the best place to play test pits into the ground.
Could you come up and help on getting that voice on this?
What was that, sorry? All good. I will continue on. And here we have a test pit being slowly dug. It was scraped back inch by inch because we knew something was there, we just weren't sure what it was. And here you can see sheets of asbestos that was in the ground. So without doing the aerial photography interpretation, we would have had no idea that there was anything in the ground on this site. So we're able to uncover this contamination. By doing so, we've alerted the potential buyer that there's going to be a remediation cost with their large development they want to do on this
What did you do?
4-hectare site.
Speaker?
Yeah. Yes, David?
Apologies, I was having trouble hearing.
Yep, okay. You can hear me okay there?
Very good now, thank you.
So why should you get a licensed asbestos assessor involved? Here you can see a brick stockpile. We've estimated that to be 100 cubes, which equates to about 200 tonnes. The brick and concrete disposal cost at $75 a tonne approximate, depends on where you're able to dispose of it, would cost around $15,000 just as a disposal cost. If, however, there was asbestos within that, which there actually is asbestos within that stockpile, the cost jumps out dramatically. So it goes to $450 a tonne approximate, and that is determined on whichever waste facility that actually has to go to. And so you can see that the price variation there from $15,000 to $90,000. So what's happened in this case is if someone had actually gone in and done a proper inspection on a property, because this is actually a bathroom, laundry, and I'm trying to think what else it was. I don't think it was the kitchen, but it was definitely a bathroom and a laundry. If someone had done a proper inspection of that, they would have found that there was asbestos there, which would have meant that someone, asbestos removal company, could come in, remove that asbestos, and thereby not contaminating that stockpile. But instead, the client now has a much larger bill to get rid of. We have actually designed a remediation technique that will save half to 3/4 of the material from needing to go to landfill, and also save 3/4 of the price of the disposal cost. So this was a very interesting find in a property that someone had just purchased. I must have had a building inspection done on it, but this was above the bathroom, and so the access hole is what I'm actually standing on top. I'm standing on a ladder, taking a photo into this access hole area, and then above that sheeting there's another hole to get up into the actual roof void. But you can see that there's asbestos, broken sheets all around, and there was bits of asbestos all over that insulation that you can see there. The concern with this is if anyone was, well, even just using the bathroom could be a little bit of concern, because there are there's potential for fibres to be in that area, but um, the fan will be sucking air up and hopefully not pushing air back down. My recommendation for this was to get an asbestos removal company in to take out the insulation, take out the broken sheets or seal them, and try and tidy up that paintwork as best they could. So if you do find asbestos in your home, I know you guys are all um, building inspectors, but just to remind you, all those things down the left-hand side, just don't do it. Don't cut it, don't drill it, don't drop it, don't saw it, don't scrape it, don't scrub it, don't dismantle it, don't tip it, don't water blast it, don't demolish it, and whatever you do, don't dump it. But there are ways to do some of those things. We've been able to set up a couple of protocols for companies to actually be able to drill safely into asbestos, which takes a fair bit of messing about to do, but there are ways to get it done, and shouldn't just be done with a hand drill. And here we can see a garage shed in the middle of the three, and being building inspectors, you'll come across many different types of sheeting, and you may not take as much notice as what an asbestos assessor might take note of. So this garage was a friend of mine, and essentially asked me to come around and have a look at it before he demolished it, to check out to see if it was asbestos. And then on either side you can see the two different sheets that I've got photos of the back of, both being HardieFlex, one being HardieFlex with asbestos and the other being HardieFlex without asbestos. And as it turns out, the builder must have just had a stockpile of material, and it must have been around the time of phasing out of asbestos products, and they've used the two different products on the same building. This is the one and only building I've come across that has it on one wall as asbestos, and then on another wall as non-asbestos. And as a building inspector, what should you do? Did you find asbestos? Did you find something suspicious? If you have a look at the photo on the right, you'll be able to quite easily see the asbestos wall sheeting, and you'd also see the asbestos moulding as part of the roof. What you probably haven't picked up on straight away is the actual asbestos pipe running across the back of the building. This asbestos pipe also drops down underneath the surface and all the way to the street frontage. So our recommendation is that you highlight that you found some asbestos containing material in the property, because you don't want to overstep your mark. And I've seen this happen a couple of times where a building inspector has has said there's no asbestos in this house, and signed off on it. And then other people have come in and found that there's asbestos on this property as a tradesperson. Sorry, the tradesperson came into the site, found there's asbestos there. They've then contacted a licensed asbestos assessor to come in and do an actual investigation to see where the asbestos was. And I think they've dealt with the issue now, but it was, I think, starting to get nasty. With the recommendation that we have got there is that you guys are really good at what you do, and you should just mention there's asbestos there and try not show where it is within your report. So, and then recommend that a licensed asbestos assessor undertake an asbestos risk register inspection on the property, and that way we can then come in and do a full inspection, identify where the asbestos is, its current state, or whether any management plan needs to be put in place for that asbestos. Well, so that was sort of the end of the asbestos section. So working in the contamination sector, our job sites have varied from taking a simple soil sample through to underground storage remediation projects, like you can see here on the right-hand side. A remediation project of a service station is usually undertaken over a few days, where we're able to excavate out the tanks, take the tanks out. But what we also do find is that sometimes there's asbestos fill in around some of those tanks, particularly sort of the late 60s and early 70s. You tend to find a bit of contamination in asbestos around those tanks, so we still have to be careful about those type of things. So it was a short presentation, but please do not hesitate to contact me to discuss asbestos or any other services that we do offer. And just remember, if it's environmental, think engage. Thank you. I did have one question from Mark Williamson about the asbestos. I was trying to think what it was.
There's another one there on the chat menu from Dale Kennedy as well.
Okay,
Steve.
I'll just see if I can get that up. I'll just stop sharing. It should pop up. There we go. I'll just deal with Mark's question first, because it was to do with solar panels, and up in northern Queensland, where they've had a fair bit of damage, and some of the solar panels have been damaged and potentially contaminated the water sources, being the tank water and things like that. So I did a bit of research on that fairly quickly, called a couple of people I know that actually installed solar panels. And what I was able to find out was that they're generally amorphous solar panels. They're thin-filled solar panels, and it's a cadmium contamination that when it breaks up, the solar panels break up, it releases a bit of cadmium, which then gets taken down into the water tank, and being a heavy metal, contaminates that water. So therefore, depending on the concentration of cadmium in that water, you would need to get rid of either the tank or just the water out of it and flush the tank out. And I'm not aware of any asbestos in solar panels at this stage.
Yeah, we've found out with the research that we've been doing that there has been a splattering of Chinese imported solar panels that may contain asbestos in them.
Yeah.
And we're trying to get to the bottom of how many panels contain cadmium as well, because there's a few different products that can make up the PV panel on the solar panels. Doesn't all have to be cadmium apparently, but yeah, we're finding that out of Rockhampton Hale. That was a few weeks ago now, and some solar panels up there that containing contaminated metals in there.
Do you know where the asbestos might have been in those solar panels?
No. That's what. Yeah, we're trying to get to the bottom of it. So if you find out anything, or if you, likewise, if I find out anything, I'll share it with you as well. Yeah, no, it was a bit of anecdotal, maybe evidence that some of the Chinese imported solar panels may contain asbestos.
Yeah, well, it could very well be a gasket or something like that somewhere.
Yeah, that'd be a good info guys, if we could follow up on that, because I know driving home back in March, early March, and it was recently when I went through Gloucester and Dungog, recently after a hailstorm there, and there wasn't a solar panel in the whole town that wasn't broken.
Mm.
So, and they're all out on tank water out there. So yeah, whatever info, and I know from my perspective, that's certainly an area that I do inspections in, and I'm sure Mal goes out there and a few others. I'm not sure if you head out there, Pete, but yeah, any info that we can find out on that would be much appreciated.
Yeah, because until that question came in, I wasn't aware that there was an issue of cadmium breaking out of those solar panels.
No, it's only something that I've realised in the last week or so. Yeah, there seems to be some restoration companies up around Rockhampton, and yeah, as a result of the cadmium, they're replacing entire roofs, entire gutters, all the stormwater system, all the water tanks are all getting replaced as being contaminated. And then, as you said, with the cost of contaminated waste, all getting disposed of as contaminated waste, which is, so I don't know whether it's every solar panel, whether it's 1 in 10, 1 in 100. Yeah, I don't know. So,
it might just be a certain brand, or it might be a certain type. So,
yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to the bottom of at the moment.
Yeah. And this is. So here's the other question. Asbestos in domestic housing is not carcinogenic. What are your thoughts? Asbestos is carcinogenic, whether it's
absolutely
domestic or commercial, industrial. It's all the same material. It is all carcinogenic. You've got to be careful no matter what type of asbestos you're dealing with.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks very much.
Anyone else got any further? Oh, here's from Mark Lynn. What is the prevalence of asbestos in carpet underlay?
In carpet, it's not so much in carpet underlay, but vinyl underlay. So some of the actual vinyl sheets themselves have asbestos within them, and sometimes there's a paper like backing on other types of vinyl as well, which has asbestos in it, which is a very tricky situation because it can, in its current form, it's bonded, which means they can remove it as is, whereas if it starts to break up at all, it then turns it into a friable situation, which means it's breaking off little fibres that are inhalable, and that means they've got to set up negative air units and a bubble to remove that asbestos material. I'm actually working on a site down in the Central Coast. I'm trying to think of the name of the place. It's down near Woy Woy, where they're actually pulling up some asbestos vinyl sheeting at the moment. I thought it was going to be a nice, easy job, but it's turned into a bit of a nightmare. So I'm back there tomorrow.
I think Leo's got a question. You got a question, Leo?
Mark, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Mark, it's not actually a question. It's actually something I want to share, but I would like to share with Stephen especially. Just recently, I have had a development site that I'm doing a small development at the ponds. And unfortunately for me, I've had quite a substantial amount of dumped soil on my property. Even though that it was gated or fenced off, unfortunately they broke through and dumped all this soil. And we've had to actually bring in a geotech to categorise it into, E&M, which is your excavated natural material, as opposed to your SWA, for your special waste asbestos. Unfortunately for me, we're talking about a substantial amount of tonnage. So I employed someone to pick through it and try to separate it to bring that classification down, and that cost me a fair bit of money. It's going to cost me a fair bit of money to take that asbestos material away. And because I have reported to the EPA, it's all ticketed, so it has to be disposed of, with special tickets and so on, of where this waste is going. So a very, very, very expensive exercise. So $400 a tonne is about right of what I'm looking at. Yeah, not happy, Jan, but it's something that was bestowed on me and I've got to deal with it. So it's, I just wanted to share that with the group.
Yeah, and it's not an isolated incident either. It happens a lot, whether it's a small pile of asbestos material that's been dumped on something like a wheelbarrow full of material, a truck, or if it's several trucks as well, it happens. And yeah, the only way it can stop happening is better regulation, and that's becoming more difficult.
Unfortunately, the EPA were advised, council and the police, and because the trucks could not be identified and the cameras didn't pick up anything, unfortunately, no prosecution was, we couldn't pin it on anyone. So it's just unfortunate the way that it has happened. Yeah.
Go on, Mel. Oh, unmute you.
I had an operation in January. I was in hospital for a couple of weeks. I've got lung disease, and they removed part of my left lung, and part of the biopsy in the lung was asbestos, silica and coal dust. So many years ago when I first started doing these inspections, I didn't wear a mask. For so many jobs, I just went, I'll be right. So just to remind everybody, wear your mask, wear your gear, because it's not good.
Yeah, we can all become a bit complacent at times, so it's always good to have a reminder just to wear it. It's not there for show; it's there for a purpose.
Ooh. Okay. Well, I think on that note, can everyone hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Stephen. I would hope that I know up here in the Hunter, we deal with asbestos day in, day out. That shed that you showed with the two types of fibrous cement sheeting. So it's very, very common up here to find a shed with hardy flex, no asbestos in this product. And then you walk around to the back of it and it'll be full of asbestos, where basically something, a kid has kicked a soccer ball into the shed, so they've stripped off that side and they've put the hardy flex on the other side. It's fairly common. And also some of the insurance companies are a little bit particular on, they don't like you basically stating that it's just a blanket. There possibly may be asbestos in here. They're really getting particular on, what is it, where is it, and what's the client going to do about it. So we do a lot of times have to nominate where we think it may be. And obviously, I think most of the consultants that are in our group are normally pretty switched on and would identify those areas as being the bathroom, laundry and toilet internally, and then the eaves and possibly fibrous cement sheeting, if it's hardy plank on the exterior or a detached garage. But yeah, it's as I say, I've had a lot of experience as an apprentice cutting it all up, and I've got a bucket load in my lungs as well. But we live and learn, and it's a product that's going to be in Australia for a lot more years to come. But as I think the biggest thing that we can do as building consultants is to try and encourage builders, licensed builders, that when they take on a job or when someone buys a house and they intend to flip it, if you like, rather than just cover it up and do a bathroom reno and just cover it up, pull it out, do the right thing, strip it, spend the money, strip it all out, take photos, get it certified, so when they go and sell the property further down the track, that that's one house that's got a clear tick, because it isn't a lot of buildings, and it'll be around for a long time. So thanks very much, gents, for all coming. Is David still with us? Has he? Yes, he's
I've
awake.
woken up again. Thanks, mate.
Good on you, mate. Good on you.
Got the cue. I set the alarm. I was not
All
true
right,
at all,
well,
Stephen. It was very interesting. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for attending, and if we could leave it with you, Dave, to give us a closing quote, mate, for a Dad's Jack, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, look, as I'm here, obviously, because I do construction law. One of the things that I don't do and that we don't do at Bardia Perry is family law. But I did hear a story the other day about a fellow who ended up in the family court, and they were trying to do the property settlement, and the judge said to him, "Well, look, Mr. Smith, I've looked at your submissions, I've reviewed the evidence, and I've decided to give your wife $25,000 a month." And you'd think the husband would be fairly upset about that, but he wasn't. He looked up and he said, Your Honour, I think that's very fair. And every now and then I'll try and send her a few bucks myself. So that's my Newcastle joke for the time being.
Yeah. All right, mate.
With a bit more notice, I'll give you something better next time.
All right. Thanks very much, David. All right. Well, anyone at their leisure can press that button on the top left of the screen, or right, wherever it is, and leave. Otherwise, they can just unmute themselves and have a chat. And thanks for attending.
Okay.
No worries. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, Graham and Stephen. I just had Lewis mentioned about contaminated materials some years ago, and I've signed a deed where there was some material which was brought out of Holsworthy when they were doing some substantial changes in the Holsworthy area, and it's put into an estate, shall I say, out west of Sydney. The problem was that when they were doing some of the construction on site, they found live ammunition, and the developer had to remediate the site and that development of live ammunition. So some of the contaminated material can be other than asbestos. So that was, let's say, nothing short of interesting, considering a lot of houses had been completed. The other thing that was mentioned also on being aware and wearing PPE, which is, I think, essential for any of the consultants doing inspections in subfloor and roof areas. And one of the things due to what I've been through some years ago, which some people are aware of, is that when doing inspections on subfloor, there is no warnings that chemicals prior to 1995 have been installed in subfloor areas of buildings. And the comment there about wearing protective equipment certainly applies to subfloor areas. And what I realized is that a lot of that is also, and we're very aware of due to the current virus situation, of when you're removing all your safety and PPE equipment, the last thing you need to do is actually wash your hands, because you're removing clothes and gloves and everything else that may have been in contact with carcinogenic materials in the subfloor area. And that's not in any rule book, but I've realized that what you need to do is the last thing before after you've taken off all of your overalls and protective equipment, is you wash your hands. And it's just basically a good hygiene thing, because you can ingest some chemicals, even though taints of it, and create other issues from a health point of view.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree on that. And in the last 5 years, I've carried out quite a few OH&S safety inspections, audits, if you like, on on some mining companies, and I've taken an electrician and a plumber with me, and basically they're looking at the plumbing and the electrical, and I'm looking at the building. And sometimes, you know, they don't wear PPE, or they just go in with a too blase or attitude. And I've tried to teach these young blokes, and I do still wherever I can, that, you know, and they say, oh, but look, you know, the house is obviously built in the 40s or the 50s. It's on concrete piers. There's plenty of room. I don't need to put overalls on. I can crawl straight in there. There's no cobwebs. There's no nothing. And it's all nice and clean in there. And I say, yeah, there's a reason why it's all nice and clean in there, because the chemicals they used back in 1940 is still killing every live spider that walks in there nowadays, let alone a rat or anything else, you know. So it's up to us to try and educate the young'uns that, you know, a lot of these houses that they are buying and doing up still contain these chemicals, still contain the asbestos. And like, asbestos is a really good product. It's an excellent product, as long as you don't break it, scratch it, whatever your list was there, Stephen, which was excellent. You know, there's a few more on that list that I haven't seen before, but yeah, it's a really good product. You just got to treat it with respect.
Yeah, absolutely. But the key thing with that, with any of the guys doing inspections, is after you've finished your inspections, and you're at it properly, the last thing you need to do is visit a tap.
Yep.
And wash your hands clean after you put all your clothing away, your gloves, your whatever you've got, and then you can go from there, where you're not actually bringing with you some of the chemicals that are underneath the house.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Totally agree. And it needs to be washed and, you know,
It's not in the good book, but it's good advice. But thank you, Graham.
Yeah, it's a good observation, David. Thank you.
Yeah, no, very good.
David, I was going to say that even at the Homebush Olympic site, they found ammunition when they were doing the main stadium. There was a big ammunition dump, because I believe that was that used to be used for a army reconnaissance field back in the heydays. So when they were doing the main stadium, they found an ammunition dump.
Yes, but I think most of the guys that are in the society are not old enough. And I remember my early building days of going down the Homebush, going down Underwood Road, which used to be a drag strip for the hoons on Saturday night. And there was a guy of certain European extract, and he will allow you in as long as you paid cash. And he will allow everything in. And a lot of the mounds that are at Homebush are, because it was difficult to remediate, it was just better to cover it. So everything during the 50s and 60s was dumped down there.
Yeah.
And that's not surprising, but I'm not sure what it cost the government. I don't think we'll ever find out.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to sign off and go and have my tea. Thank you all for coming and attending. Thanks, Mark, for joining us, and Joe for doing the bit, and David for coming along. It's been good, and I'm glad you got it, Pete. You're still there, I see. Okay. Yeah. All right.
See you, fellas.
Thanks, Graham, and thank you, Steve, for your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, cheers.
No
Thanks, guys.
See you later.
See you guys.
Okay.